area boleh ya. Atau teman-teman di pojok boleh juga join. Oke. Sudah 28, kita tunggu 2 lagi. Kira-kira masih bisa? Oke, 29 udah naik nih. Oke, so most of the people now very happy. And 40% is I'm doing okay, but I think there's 6% sad. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Siapa yang mau share? Siapa yang sad? Maybe we can cheer you up. Okay, so hopefully people yang sad nanti boleh kita ngobrol ya. Nanti ada Mbak Lian yang cheering up. Okay, hari Jumat harusnya happy dong, karena kan besok udah weekend gitu loh. Okay, next, the second question. Ali, second question, Ali. Okay, tell us your main reason on why you're attending this event. Jadi kita pengen tahu nih, buat teman-teman yang hadir, apakah untuk belajar sesuatu yang relate sama topik hari ini, atau networking dan opportunities, atau ya karena tempatnya dekat mall gitu ya, terus pengen tahu nih tempatnya having fun gitu. Oke, jadi boleh. Oh, 87% mau belajar, berarti serius banget nih hari ini. Para speaker siap-siap ya. So the speakers has to be ready because we want to learn something from this event. Okay, next question. Next question, please. Okay, next question. Have you start or implement the Agile way of working in your organization? Oke, kita pengen tahu apakah teman-teman sudah mengimplementasikan Agile atau belum, atau sudah tapi masih di beberapa part atau divisi, atau sudah semua diadopsi and still doesn't work well gitu ya. Boleh di-share ke kita jadi kita tahu nih. Kalau udah tahu Agile semua, oke, berarti nanti speakernya langsung mungkin nanya ke teman-teman justru ya. So everyone is already implement Agile in a success, and then we can ask them. Okay, so most of them is already implement Agile but not fully implemented, or is partially in some project and division. Okay, so I hope that our topic today will give you insight and knowledge, and I think Matt and Hugo and Mas Ridwan here can share insight from their experiences to how to implement Agile in organization to make it better for your organization. So without further ado, I think I can pass to Hugo to open the discussion. Thank you, Hugo.
Thank you, Matthew. Everybody can hear me, yeah? Good. Can I speak? I can do it in English, right? No need for Bahasa. Okay, saya coba ya. So today we speak about Agile implementation. I've been doing Agile stuff for I think about 12 years. And in the beginning, when I started doing Agile, it was mostly about Scrum, because Scrum is a very popular framework. And it's a very easy way to get started because it gives the right balance between prescription and still being open to contextualize how you implement Agile in your organization. So Scrum is where most Agile starts. Now, what I've also learned over the past, 12 years is Agile is much more than Scrum. So when you get started, you start with Scrum on the project level, usually in IT, but over time you start realizing it's about this notion of Agile, being Agile versus doing Agile. So the doing is, for example, Scrum, project execution, and being is about your mindset as a programmer, as a designer, but also as a leader of a company. So being Agile is about how do you create a different culture? How do you make sure people start thinking outside the box? How do you create, I don't know how many employees in Ekipa today? That's quite big. How do you get 750 people to self-organize, to take accountability so that you don't have a top-down organization? How do you shape Freedom Farm so that you don't have the silos which everybody, I think, hates? Because this is what the big companies have, and everybody who has worked in a big company understands that having silos leads to friction, handovers, kinks, having a territory and not collaborating. So when you grow a new organization, like for example, Freedom Farm, I think it's wise to think about how do you create a culture that avoids this? How do you make a structure that is not about silos, but about, for example, circles or tribes and squads? So I think I'm going to start with Matt to shed some light on what I've just said, on what do you see as the evolution of Agile in organizations, and how do you see the difference between this notion of using Agile or Scrum on a project level versus shaping an organization?
Just remembering we have presentations as well, so cool. So I think, so the work I do is working with organizations around how to be more adaptable and resilient. So Scrum is very much like a recipe. So if you're thinking about learning your mother or father's favorite dish, you'd often start with a very prescriptive recipe of how to prepare that meal. So Scrum is very good because it gives you a recipe which reinforces the learnings. I first cooked a meal when I was about 8 years old, and I didn't follow a recipe. And the chicken, I cooked the roast chicken. The chicken was raw in the middle, and my mum was very encouraging. She said, "Well done," but it was terrible. So Scrum's really good at saying, okay, you don't really understand the concepts of Agile, but if you were to follow this prescriptive method, you're going to reinforce the thinking. The challenge with that is now when I cook a meal, I don't want to follow a recipe. I want to follow what my family enjoys to eat. And the recipe is good as a foundation, but may not be tailored and specific to my family. So I think to answer your question, I recommend you start with some very prescriptive recipes early on, but recognize that your company is unique. There's no company that is made up of the individuals and the people and the problems, the challenges, the mindsets, the history. So it's really important that you start to have adapt the recipes that your context.
Can I add something to that? Because I have noticed in the Agile community, so Agile started as I think there were 17 guys in the US who created the Agile Manifesto. Everybody, I think, has heard about the Agile Manifesto. And then two of them, Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schraber, they started deviating from what they set out on the Agile Manifesto, and they created Scrum. So a lot of the original subscribers to the Agile Manifesto do not appreciate what Scrum stands for because of the recipe style prescriptive nature that it has. What do you think of that?
Yeah, and I think it's a recognition that I'm just trying to think of an example where, like, I come from New Zealand, and in New Zealand we have very strict road rules. Now, if I was to apply my New Zealand road rules to driving in Jakarta, I think I'd last about 5 minutes before I have an accident. So I need to adapt my thinking and my approach.
I was also very stressed about getting late, and I was not late to the event. I was not. He was.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I'm not used to being late to an event that I'm speaking. So I think again, I actually love Scrum. I love the fact that I can take a new team and take them through the process, and through that process they'll learn about the mindset and the practices. But equally, I wouldn't look to apply Scrum into every context. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think it answers my question. How do you see this, Ridwan? The balance between prescriptive whatever you use, Scrum, Kanban, or prescription in general, when you shape a team and giving people the freedom to contextualize and basically own their own way of doing things.
Okay, I think Scrum is really good, right? About how Scrum works and how we try to adapt it. But the important is how we understand about Scrum, because if we not follow the prescription, I'm afraid, I'm worried that we are not going to maximize the framework. But I'm not saying that if we not follow the prescription, we're not going to be agile. It's not like that. Maksud, what I mean is, even we not like Matt said that in cooking that not really follow the prescription, the essence of the Scrum we have to know about it. It definitely should. If not, we just doing Scrum, but like a mechanical Scrum. For me, like that.
Yeah, so how do you your team encourage people to find that balance of not getting, because people like to do step 1, 2, 3, very easy. You don't need to think like the recipe. If you follow the recipe literally, it's very easy because you can just read what it says and then follow every ingredient. What I do when I cook is I change the taste. I change some spices because I don't have them or because I think it's better. But how do you balance that, people wanting to follow 1, 2, 3 versus giving them freedom, but also not too much because they might do something that you don't want them to do?
Okay, that's a good question.
The essence of leadership.
But for me, as about Scrum, is what is the goal? What's the goal we use in Scrum? Why we using Agile? Why we conduct the Agile practices? It's all about the goals. If you wanna be Agile and not just focus on the Agile practice like doing Scrum or Kanban, anything else, etc. But what makes the impact on the Agile practices to our business outcome? So from basically, if you're using Scrum, we have to balance from the people. People should know what Scrum means, what's the achievement of using Scrum, and allow us, the people, to accomplish what the business outcome is. That's right.
Yeah, I think that's what it's about. You have to make people aware that the goal is not implementing Scrum and following step 1, 2, 3. The goal is the outcome that you're trying to create with it. Be it a great product, be it delivering to the client faster. You have to speak about that. Are you able to even link your Scrum or your Agile to business outcome, to financial numbers, for example, or to how many farmers you serve?
Maybe I'll talk it later.
That's what. Okay, I'm not gonna destroy your presentation. Maybe a related question to where I started is to how do you translate the original thinking of the Agile Manifesto and what those guys set out to do, plus everything that evolved after the Agile Manifesto was created around structure, culture, etc., into the, let's say, the fundament of your organization. So how do you, like in either form, or maybe also in your experience, Matt, how do you get, like, how do you create certain ingredients in your culture or in your company that reflect this sense of agility beyond the project notion of Agile?
So we often talk about this concept of being versus doing Agile. So I'm not too sure. Hands up if you've heard about that before. Being versus doing. Okay, great. So the Scrum, the recipe, is what we could do in Agile. And this is, so for example, if we go to a company and they say, oh, we do Agile. Okay, what do you do? We have stand-ups. We run retrospectives. We collaborate as a team. Okay, so maybe you do Agile. But then when they come to those events, they might fight, or they might not necessarily have deeper conversations, or they might not consider how the last iteration went and how to apply learnings into this iteration. That's, for me, is an example of someone who's more focused on doing the practices as opposed to having the mindset. So to answer your question, if you in probably back to the how to start implementing Agile in your organization, really focus on what does it mean to have this idea of a growth or an Agile mindset. Okay, so whether you decide to do Scrum, Kanban, your own version of Agile that you just made up last week, if you start with the foundation of a growth or an Agile mindset, I can guarantee that you're going to have success, some form of success. So then it's about how do you reinforce that, how do you grow that. Yeah, I think we go more into that in the slide as well.
So related to this, maybe a specific question for Rick one here. So what I'm seeing is that one of the big challenges in creating an agile organization is to get people to self-organize.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Like, do you force people? How do you get that?
No, we don't force people, but we embrace them. We give them knowledge about Scrum itself or the Agile. What should do Agile do? Mostly we delivering value. That's the important thing. No matter what you gonna, how you deliver the process, the Scrum, but at the end is what we are going to do is gonna be impacted to our customer or our stakeholder. That's the important thing. So maybe for myself that every sprint, what we gonna do is every sprint in a review, we give them a feedback form, how they satisfy with us, how we work, how we deliver is really answering of what they need or not. That's why we try to collaborate with stakeholder, always communication, take some engagement with them. That we really want to deliver the value what the customer needs.
Okay, so this is about feedback and about getting
Yeah,
open, transparent conversation going.
earlier feedback that we need. Because it is about change, right? How we fast that to change,
Yeah.
how can deliver what needed. So if we take too long and we're not communication with the stakeholder or the business owner, we maybe gonna lose the opportunity to affect.
Okay, so to take this one step further, what I always think is, as a founder or a leader in the organization, the ideal is you go to Bali, you sit on the beach, and you don't have to worry about anything, right? That's when you know, okay, I've got a self-organized team, and they manage. Like, how do you? Are you there already? Probably not, because you're sitting here. But how do you? What are you doing to get there?
Keep involve them to the business, because if not, they will just keep to take the task only, not the outcome. Maybe I'm gonna share in my slide, but
You're going to talk about task versus outcome.
not specifically, but
Can you explain, because that's sometimes unlikely to people. What's
Yeah.
the difference between a task, output, and
output.
outcome?
Okay, maybe in sprint, yeah, in Scrum sprint, we deliver increment. We have the velocity. That's an output, but the outcome is the impact of our deliver to our customer. That's the difference. The output. We can measure the output. How many delivered increment, how many wireframe we deliver, but the outcome is something that we cannot measure directly. We need a feedback, we need to adapt it, we need to set it. The output.
Okay.
And outcome.
Yeah. So what you're basically answering is the to get you to the beach in Bali, you need to focus people on outcomes. What else? What ingredients are you bringing to your team to make you realize?
Yeah, keep coaching and teaching them, mentor them. What I mean is in our tech teams, in my team, they should know the essence of Scrum and the essence of Agile. What the Agile is, we need to adapt so quite fast, so we can deliver what the customer or stakeholder.
Okay, so what you're saying is you create clear outcomes together with the team or with individuals, and then so that's about what you're expecting, where to go, and then the how you coach them to get there, but it's up to them eventually.
Yeah, it's most likely like a collective ownership.
right?
Yeah, whole team is responsible what should be done. Not the only one, only two person who have the responsible of this task or not task. So they have to know about what is the collective ownership.
Okay, okay. So it's about ownership. Okay. Maybe what you said 15 minutes for this conversation. Shall we go into the presentations? Okay. Who's gonna start?
Okay, I will deliver in bahasa. Maybe
Okay.
it's for Hugo and Matt, we take the conversation in English, but oh, oke. Oke, selamat siang semua. Aja deh. View-nya enak. Oke, kali ini nanti saya nggak akan cerita banyak ya tentang teori, proses, praktis dan sebagainya. Saya pengen cerita aja Agile implementation itu seperti apa. Jadi mungkin ada beberapa yang langsung ditanya, short question aja akan saya jawab. Jadi mungkin saya juga cuma punya waktu 20 sekitar 20 menit. Oke, next. Oke, mungkin perkenalan dulu. Nama saya Ridwan. Posisi saya di itu adalah Agile Leader, tapi saya juga sebagai Scrum Master juga. Saya masih manage tim, bukan manage, tapi sebagai Scrum Master di tim, di beberapa tim saya masih pegang 2 tim. Walaupun secara whole mungkin Agile atau Agility di ini termasuk tanggung jawab saya juga dan tim juga. Saya lulusan Electrical Engineer, jadi saya bukan orang IT, tapi saya adalah orang teknik. Sertifikasi saya adalah PSN 2 dan PSPO 1. Di dan sendiri memang nanti akan saya ceritakan ya prosesnya, perjalanannya Agile itu seperti apa. Oke, tapi sebelumnya kan cerita event farm itu apa sih? Bisnisnya apa? Produknya apa? Oke, kita terbagi menjadi 3 produk besar ya. Ada supply, demand, dan mungkin bisa dikatakan support. Nah, produk-produk di event ini yang nanti kita kembangkan secara teknologi karena kita perusahaan agriculture ya, kita mensuplai bahan makanan, bahan masakan, buah-buahan, sayuran itu pengennya itu kita cut the change. Yang tadinya dari petani harus ke tengkulak dulu, harus ke distributor, pertama dari petani harga berapa sampai end user harga berapa, atau ke bisnis seperti tradisional pendengaring, dead matter dan sebagainya. Nah itu kita mencoba untuk membuat supply chain itu semakin singkat dan sama-sama menguntungkan untuk dari sisi petani. Jadi tidak terlalu banyak proses dan selalu fresh untuk bahan-bahan makanan. Jadi bisa langsung ke end user atau ke bisnis to bisnis. Kita fokus di B2B, bukan B2C. Mungkin kita yang banyak itu banyak ke B2C, tapi kita lebih banyak ke B2B. Oke. Nah, dulu kita mengembangkan produk kita itu semua kita masih pakai tradisional. Semua dari fase-fasenya itu kita lakukan dari requirement dulu, terus kemudian bikin desainnya, infrastrukturnya, arsiteknya, terus baru kita implement atau kita eksekusi, kita development, kemudian ada verification, testing dan sebagainya, dan akhirnya apa? Mungkin seperti gambar di bawah ya. Semua requirement itu kita akan gathering di depan, yang mana itu mungkin butuh waktu berminggu-minggu, 1 bulan lah. Dan tapi apakah yang kita deliver itu benar-benar yang dibutuhkan sama customer? Mungkin iya, tapi karena itu berubah semakin cepat. Nah, pada saat kita dalam masa development, ternyata banyak perubahan yang dibutuhkan. Pasti banyak yang ngalamin. Saya sempat ngalamin juga di sini. Benar nggak? Nah, apa yang kalian lakukan kalau ada perubahan seperti ini? Change request? Nggak bisa. Nah, itu kalau jelas. Kalau enggak, ya, yang bisa kita lakukan apa? Kita akan selesaikan dulu. Instrumennya atau proyeknya kita selesaikan. Dan kita akan ada change request dan sebagainya lah. Tapi itu prosesnya lama. Dan ketika kita menyelesaikan itu, apakah kebutuhan market, kebutuhan customer masih seperti itu? Belum tentu kan? Nah, itu indahnya aja. Saya bilang indah. Walaupun waktu kita implementasi itu mungkin berdarah-darah. Yang bilang Agile indah, silahkan. Tapi kalau kita benar-benar bisa, itu pasti indah. Rian, senyuman. Oke, dari sini kita mengambil pelajaran. Ketika kita ada perubahan, ada potensi, ada opportunity yang mesti kita segera lakukan, tapi kok susah ya? Kenapa ya? Kalaupun kita bisa melakukan itu, tapi udah telat. Nah, karena apa? Karena kondisi kita sekarang ini, kita masih di power. Mungkin banyak yang udah tahu ya, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Nah, ini tidak terelakkan untuk saat ini. Karena apa? Perubahannya cepat sekali. Volatility, semua tuh yang kita prediksi itu cepat banget. Turun. Kita, oke, itu akan di titik ini. Ternyata kita udah mau nyampe situ. Dengan metode waterfall atau metode tradisional, kita akan susah untuk ngikutin itu. Apalagi uncertainty, semuanya nggak pasti. Apa yang kita tahu hari ini untuk 2 bulan lagi, baru jalan 1 bulan udah berubah. Dan pekerjaan itu semakin kompleks. Apa yang kita tahu ini seperti ini, ternyata enggak. Dan susah untuk dapat kejelasan itu susah. Dari sini kita coba untuk define ada namanya metodologi atau pendekatan approach itu Agile. Nah, kita tetap melakukan untuk Agile itu kita tetap buat plan, setidaknya quarterly lah, 3 bulan. Itu tapi kita nggak akan selalu follow plan, tapi setidaknya kita tahu prediksi kita dalam 3 bulan untuk mencapai titik A. Namun dalam perjalanannya, apakah masih di titik A yang sebagai suatu yang beneficial itu apa masih tidak? Belum tentu. Tapi plan itu sebagai guide kita. Terus Agile ini apa? Kita ada perubahan, kenapa? Kita iterasi, kita sprint, jadi kita bisa. Nah, mungkin Anda tahu ya, Agile itu secara teori ini, tapi yang menarik itu bagaimana kita menjalaninya, bagaimana cara kita memulai. Ini yang kita lakukan di Hidden Farm sendiri. Sebentar, saya minum. Nah, dengan Agile ini kita bukan project itu ada start sama end-nya. Yang selesai udah. Mau dikembangkan apa lagi? Paling ada tambahan feature. Ya, tapi itu ada project kan begitu. Tapi kalau produk itu nggak ada berakhirnya, itu nggak ada. Akan selalu hidup selama produk itu dipakai. Selama itu kalau secara finansial masih mendatangkan revenue itu akan dikembangkan terus. Kita akan eksplorasi. Tapi kalau project mungkin eksploitasi. Nah, kenapa kita Agile? Karena tujuan kita itu adalah ke business outcome. Tujuan perusahaan yang akan kita kejar itu. Karena kalau kita nggak business outcome-nya, yang ada kita tetap akan fokus pada output. Tapi kita belum tahu apa yang kita deliver itu benar nggak oleh market. Nah, pada waktu kita melakukan Agile practices, kita hanya fokus di Agile-nya aja. Di Agile practice kayak Scrum, udah kita Scrum. Scrum apa sih? Ada accountability, artifatnya, sama eventnya. Udah kita jalani. Udah jalanin. Tapi tujuannya apa? Untuk Agile itu tujuannya apa? Business outcome adalah goalnya. Jadi kadang kita melakukan Agile practices, kita jalan Scrum. Tapi kita tujuannya itu cuma itu. Jalanin Scrum. Tidak dikonekkan dengan business outcome-nya. Nah, kita harusnya ketika melakukan Agile practices, kita harus tahu kapabilitas dari Agile itu apa. Dari kapabilitas itu yang menggiring kita atau membawa kita ke outcome-nya Agile. Outcome-nya Agile seperti apa? Iterasi contohnya, kita deliver per sprint. Nah, itu impact ke bisnis apa? Nah, itu kita harus bisa menyambungkan dari titik Agile itu sampai ke bisnis outcome. Tujuannya Agile itu apa? Harus impact ke bisnis outcome. Bukan hanya tujuannya apa? Udah kita aja pakai Scrum, jalan Scrum. Tanpa ngeliat bisnis outcome, sebenarnya Scrum bisa jalan. Punya satu tim, udah kita jalanin sprint, kita jalan review, kita retro daily. Tapi dapat nggak esensinya itu? Ini harus dipikirkan ketika mau menjalin Scrum. Jadi tujuan utama harus berimpact dengan bisnis perusahaan juga. Oke, kita mulai untuk ketika kita implementasi. Apa sih yang pertama kita lakukan? Yang pertama kita tentukan dulu frameworknya apa. Kita pakai Scrum. Kita udah tahu Scrum itu ada eventnya, ada aturannya, ada penting Scrum Master, Product Owner, dan sebagainya. Kemudian setelah kita sudah menentukan frameworknya, dan kita harus melihat nih dari tujuan kita major apa untuk mencapai bisnis outcome. Itu harus, menurut saya harus, karena kalau enggak ya kita akan mechanical Scrum aja, jalanin event dan sebagainya. Mungkin dalam satu saya cuma ngerjain task, ketika review nggak bisa deliver apa-apa karena apa, belum selesai, akhirnya apa, carry over lagi. Bedanya sama waterfall gimana? Ini yang kadang jujur waktu di sini pun itu terjadi gitu. Dalam satu sprint pertama, kedua, ketiga. Mending kalau sprint pertama itu dari 100% atau 100 yang bisa dulu, selesainya 50. Ini sama sekali nggak ada. Nggak ada yang bisa deliver, kerjaan nggak selesai. Tapi apa kita marahin? Enggak. Kita pada waktu retro kita tanya, kenapa nggak selesai? Dia akan cerita masalahnya ini. Oke, berarti udah tahu listenernya. Sprint kedua masuk, masih begitu lagi. Sampai 3 kali seperti itu terus. Tapi ketika kita gagal, misalkan kita loncat. Kita gagal loncat, setidaknya dari titik sini, kita gagalnya dari sini. Loncat lagi, gagalnya lagi dari sini. Jadi ada progres, karena apa? Mereka belajar, jadi itu belajar. Nah, yang kedua, forming team. Ini yang penting. Sebelum di Eden, saya tahunya itu apa? Ketika forming team, dari manajer level itu akan nunjuk, lo ke tim A, ini tim C. Tapi di kita coba enggak. Kenapa? Dari tim produk, tadinya BA bisa salah. Dia pegang produk, dia udah diminta untuk menguasai kita itu. Dan mereka suruh presentasi ke developer. Produk A, produk B, produk C, mereka pada presentasi. Dan timnya sendiri yang akan milih mau masuk kemana. Karena itu akan membuat dari tim developer itu akan memiliki ownership. Karena dia tertarik dengan produk itu. Kalau kita tunjuk, iya dia mau, tapi kadang fokus dengan menyelesaikan aja. Tapi kalau kita minta untuk mereka milih, passion dia di mana sih, pengennya apa sih? Nah itu yang unik di situ. Jadi kita nggak meminta mereka untuk di tim A, tim B, tim C, gitu. Tapi mereka akan memilih sendiri passionnya ada di mana. Ada yang ke demand, ada yang ke supply, ada yang ke farmer, dan seperti itu. Nah, yang ketiga, ketika kita bicara goals kita share dengan mereka. Kita nggak hanya ini loh, ngejalanin Agile practices pakai Scrum loh. Tapi esensi dari Scrum itu apa? Kita punya tujuan. Tujuan apa? Product vision. Product vision kita turunkan menjadi product goal atau epic. Kita punya epic dalam quarterly. Tujuan kita dalam 3 bulan ke depan adalah kita achieve ini. Kenapa kita achieve ini? Karena dengan achieve ini akan berimpact dengan bisnis perusahaan, menambah revenue, efisiensi cost, menambah speed, dan sebagainya. Itu kita sampaikan. Jadi nggak cuma mereka mengerjakan apa yang kita mau. Mereka tahu, oh kalau kita mengerjakan ini, impactnya di operasional seperti ini, di penjualan akan seperti ini, menambah revenue dan sebagainya. Itu yang selalu kita bahas pada waktu planning dan refinement. Kita share terus. Kemudian inspect dan adapt. Nah, apakah selalu mulus seperti itu? Enggak. Percaya, enggak. Pada saat review stakeholder kecewa, pernah. Pada saat review stakeholder nggak ngerti apa yang kita sampaikan, pernah. Tapi inspect lagi pada saat dimana di retro kita sampaikan, kenapa ya tadi review seperti itu, yang kurang gimana ya? Oke, coba kita review depan, kita ubah deh. Kita ubah untuk metodenya, mungkin kita bikin draftnya yang apa yang disampaikan di review. Oke, kita coba lagi. Pada review masih begitu lagi, jatuh bangun sebenarnya sama. Kadang kita di sisi di level manajemen kita mikir gini, sebenarnya kita cocok nggak sih pakai Agile? Benar, Serius. Kita sempat ngomong seperti itu karena kita kayaknya udah ngikutin frameworknya, tapi kok masih begini terus. Tapi dari situ kita nggak berhenti, kita inspect terus, kita ukur lagi pada saat review seperti apa, deliverable-nya seperti apa. Nah, dari situ kita ada improvement. Yang kurang apa sih pada saat review apa, pada saat planning apa, pada saat development-nya seperti apa, pada saat deliverable-nya seperti apa, engagement stakeholder seperti apa, feedback-nya seperti apa. Nah, kita terus improve terus. Dan sebenarnya memang ini cuma muter, adapt, deliver lagi dan gitu, tapi kita ada goals-nya, ada tujuan yang mencapai. Nah, satu yang pengen saya sampaikan itu tentang Scrum ya. Ini saya nggak akan ngomong proses. Itu adalah next. Nah ini mungkin next lagi. Nah ini adalah Scrum value. Ini penting banget. Kalau di Scrum Guide mengatakan sprint itu jantungnya Scrum, tapi kalau Scrum value ini hatinya Scrum. Nggak ada sprint, nggak ada Scrum. Tapi kalau nggak ada Scrum value yang ditanamkan pada semua tim, itu nggak punya hati, jadi kayak zombie aja. Jadi knowledge, focus, komitmen, respect ini benar-benar kita harus tanamkan ke tim, baik itu developer, product owner, stakeholder, business owner dan sebagainya. Karena hasil dari Scrum atau Agile ini nanti akan kita nikmati bersama dan kita harus kerja bareng dengan mereka, dengan para business owner, dengan stakeholder. Nah, tanpa kita menanamkan Scrum value ini akan susah. Saya kan nggak akan ngomong detail ya. Ini berbagi cerita aja bagaimana kita ngejalanin Scrum dalam 1 tahun ini. Sebenarnya di event itu masih baru tahun kemarin. Saya juga join event tahun kemarin dan itu baru benar-benar mulai. Jadi saya sempat merasakan yang dalam tanda kutip berdarah-darahnya dalam Scrum itu, sampai kadang ada di titik kita itu udah ngerasa wah kayaknya nggak cocok nih kita mau balik lagi waterfall. Tapi ketika kita punya bisnis seperti itu, kita lihat lagi banyak hal yang kita nggak pasti, yang produk kompleks dengan kemauan stakeholder apa, dengan stakeholder apa, yang kita sudah deliver ternyata kita udah rilis, ternyata tidak menjawab kebutuhan. Terus kita coba lagi. Dan satu lagi, kita terapkan apa? Safe environment. Jadi ketika tim itu gagal atau nggak deliver increment atau something happen, shit happen lah. Kita ngasih mereka itu adalah motivasi untuk berinovasi lagi. Dari kegagalan itu apa yang bisa mereka dapat? Apa yang bisa mereka tingkatkan lagi? Kadang ada yang mereka tuh takut sebenarnya, takut ingin melakukan inovasi, ingin bereksperimen, hasilnya tidak sesuai, mereka takut gagal. Kalau udah takut gagal, udah mereka nggak akan inovasi lagi. Nah, ini next permainan kata-kata. Jadi dari Scrum value ini sebenarnya jika semua ini bisa kita terapkan dalam diri kita semua ya, baik itu dari tim maupun stakeholder, kita akan menimbulkan trust. Jika kita sudah trust, apapun itu akan mudah untuk dijalani, dan akhirnya apa? Agile yang indah, menyenangkan itu akan terjadi. Dan kita jujur, kita dalam perjalanan juga kadang kita happy, kadang kita enggak, pada waktu retro ada yang konflik dan sebagainya, itu masih terjadi. Tapi jangan berhenti di situ. Mungkin ada teman-teman yang ingin mencoba, gagal itu adalah suatu proses untuk berinovasi. Harus ada pelajaran di situ yang bisa kita improve lagi dari kegagalan itu. Jangan kegagalan itu adalah jelek. Wah kita aja pada bikin sih. Semua itu butuh proses. Oke, di sini saya ada 3 ya yang coba kita terapkan juga di event. Saya nggak bilang bahwa itu sudah berjalan, tapi bukan berarti ini sudah sukses di kita. Tapi ketika kita melakukan agility ini adalah 3 yang perlu kita garis bawahi atau kita fokuskan. Adalah build the right thing, get the right and the thing right, and get at the right speed. Itu maksudnya gimana? Nah, kalau kita hanya fokus pada value dan flow, di kualitinya kita akan menurun. Jadi ini harus balance. Dan yang akan kita ukur itu ada di sini untuk agility kita. Bahwa semua harus balance, building the right things itu apa yang kita kerjakan di Scrum team atau Agile team itu harus benar-benar bisa dirasakan sama stakeholder-nya atau bermanfaat atau benar-benar menjawab yang mereka butuhkan. Nah, the right thing, the things tadi kan kualitasnya. Ketika kita deliver sesuatu tapi itu tidak kualitasnya tidak dijaga, banyak bug dan sebagainya, ya akan susah juga karena kita akan balik lagi untuk menangani technical debt. Kemudian build at the right speed itu adalah flow-nya. Bagaimana kita bisa secepat mungkin untuk delivery value dengan good quality. Nah, bagusnya itu ada di tengah-tengah, di sweet spot-nya. Dan ini hanya contoh beberapa contoh pengukurannya kayak FPS, customer index itu di value-nya, quality dan flow tersebut. Oke, listening-nya adalah tadi sudah sempat saya sampaikan juga, gagal di awal di proses itu penting. Kenapa? Gagal di awal kita akan tahu, oh ini ada di mana. Kita coba berinovasi lagi, kita improve lagi dari kegagalan itu. Kita belajar dari kegagalan. Yang saya alami itu seperti itu, karena beruntungnya tim di BEM itu juga sama-sama belajar. Ketika gagal itu kita akan kita meeting, ngobrol, gagal kita kenapa sih, yang kurang support apa sih, apa yang perlu kita berbagi, sampai struktur produk kita pun akan kita ubah nih. Oh ternyata struktur produk kita nggak cocok nih, kurang, kita adjust lagi, kita improve lagi. Jangan produk organisasi struktur pun kita akan coba ubah gitu. Karena ada beberapa kita untuk mencoba agility itu terbentuk dengan struktur organisasi, dengan struktur produk dan sebagainya. Jadi listening-nya adalah apa? Kita tetap inspect and adapt. Kita cari gap-nya di mana, kita adapt lagi. Begitu terus berulang. Nah, customer engagement determine whether your initiative is effective. Ini terjadi di review sebenarnya. Karena apa? Kita build produk itu mereka yang akan pakai, bukan kita. Semakin kita kurang engage dengan customer atau stakeholder, semakin gede juga gap-nya. Apakah yang kita deliver itu sudah sesuai atau belum? Ketika kita merasa dari stakeholder tidak puas, berarti kita harus inspect lagi nih. Kita step lagi untuk memenuhi kebutuhan dari mereka, dari end user atau customer atau stakeholder. Nah, ini yang nomor 3 itu bukan sesuatu yang gimana ya, memang nggak mudah gitu. Hijau itu nggak mudah. On the paper mungkin kita bisa baca, cuman ngejalinya itu mungkin yang tadi sama nggak berdarah-darah, jatuh bangun dan sebagainya, nggak mudah ini. Dan harus difokuskan pada goal setiap sprint itu. Kita fokusnya di situ, apa yang mau kita deliver itu kita harus fokus di situ, baik dari sprint goal, product goal maupun production. Karena balik lagi yang tujuan utama kita melakukan Scrum atau doing Agile ini adalah untuk bisnis outcome-nya. Yang kita lakukan harus berimpact pada bisnis identitas sendiri. Kemudian outcome oriented. Nah, tim ini sekarang alhamdulillahnya sudah sedikit ngerti bedanya output sama outcome. Kalau output yang mereka dalam setiap sprint itu deliver increment, deliver feature-feature yang mereka kerjakan. Tapi dulu seringnya mereka fokusnya di situ, udah selesai kan. Backlog 10 mereka fokus ngerjain backlog. Backlog 15 mereka mati-matian mengerjain backlog. Tapi ternyata sprint goal-nya sendiri nggak tercapai gitu. Jadi pertama ketika kita melakukan sprint, yang kita fokuskan apa? Sprint goal, tujuan utamanya apa dalam sprint itu? Jangan lihat backlog-nya. Backlog 10 kita cuma nyelesain 5, tapi kalau kita achieve goal-nya itu udah luar biasa daripada kita nyelesain 10 semua tapi tag-tag di mana-mana. Jadi setiap sprint itu kita harus menentukan goal-nya. Dulu awal-awal juga memang nggak seperti itu, kita tuin goal tapi masih fokusnya di backlog. Backlog nggak selesai bingung. Ternyata yang mesti kita adalah sprint goal-nya. Oke, mungkin dari sini saya ingin menyampaikan sedikit, cuma nanti Matt akan jelaskan ya untuk level versi. Tapi yang yang kita inginkan di bentuk next-nya di event itu apa sih? Untuk benar-benar agile ini saya juga baca dari buku, tapi ini bagus banget. Untuk unlocking agility di suatu company itu ada lima dimensi yang mesti kita jalankan. Yang pertama teknologi, organisasi, people leadership, sama culture. Nah, teknologi ini kan di sini ngomongin itu tentang ini ya, metode sama teknik. Jadi teknologi kayak Scrum itu termasuk teknologi. Terus seperti menentukan bisnis modelnya, lean thinking, nah itu part of the agile yang harus kita penuhi, yang harus kita lakukan. Ini tujuan ke depan akan seperti ini. Kita dalam on the way di situ. Kemudian organization structure, karena struktur organisasi itu mempengaruhi bagaimana people bekerja, komunikasinya seperti apa, itu akan pengaruh banget. Dan orang-orangnya juga, mau kita pakai metode, tools, dan teknik yang bagus, tapi kalau orang-orangnya nggak bisa atau nggak mau untuk melakukan perubahan, ya agak susah. Makanya harus balance. Sama leadership, saya yakin bahwa mereka ini orang-orang yang bisa membawa people ini menjadi lebih baik untuk bisa lebih agile. Dan culture, nah dari keempat teratas ini kita udah cukup baik, tapi kalau culture kita nggak mau berubah, ya strategi apapun pasti nggak akan jalan, tergerus oleh culture itu sendiri. Jadi arahnya itu ke depan untuk agility ini adalah kita akan coba untuk ngejalanin semua di 5 dimensi ini, walaupun nggak mudah, tapi semua itu butuh proses. Karena menurut saya agile itu tetap bagaimana kita mau berubah. Kita punya pemikiran apapun, kita punya strategi apapun, kalau kita sendiri nggak mau berubah, organisasi kita nggak mau berubah, di level high level kita nggak berubah, sama aja. Jadi agile itu bagaimana kita mau melakukan perubahan itu dengan cepat. Mungkin itu dari saya. Terima kasih.
Thank you. I'm not going to pretend that I understood, but I understood the pictures. I understood the. So just a quick hands up if you are part of a team that's responsible for implementing Agile in your organization. I'm looking for at least one hand. Okay. Can I ask what your role is? Okay. All right. So let me just suggest something here. So we've got this new technology. So if I raise this hand, apparently the slide will go forward. Okay, and if I raise this hand, it might go backwards. Yeah, great, awesome technology. All right. Yeah. Okay, let's try. No, I prefer my tech. All right. So a little bit about me. So I'm originally from New Zealand. My background is in leading and working with organizations to help them implement Agile. So it's right down at the team level all the way to the executive level. So some of the experience that I have is for example, an engineering firm in New Zealand that has 3,000 employees, and they recognized that they needed to embrace agility because the customers were demanding more agility, and they were losing bids. So came in and worked with the executive team and helped them understand the agile mindset and what does it mean to empower people with agile. There's lots of information there. Oh, the tech is great. I've got to be careful. There's lots of information there. Feel free to connect with me afterwards if there's anything there you want to know more about. I've been with Ekipa since the start of the year. I moved to Bali 3 months ago. And this is my first time in Jakarta, and so far I'm loving it. I think it's great to experience, understand Indonesia. And, Jakarta is just one part of it, but my exposure so far is only in Bali, and I don't think it's a very good representation of Indonesia. Okay, so what I'm about to share, by the way, I think Hugo might fire me because there's some things here that essentially are a blueprint for what I do when I go into an organization and work with them. So Hugo, please don't fire me. Giving it away. Okay, so I want to start off talking about the org structure lifecycle. So this is something that we commonly see. So I'll start here. So this is the formal structure. So this is your org chart. Okay, so if you think about your existing org chart, it probably sits somewhere on a drive somewhere. Essentially, this is what people say the org looks like on paper. It's your formal structure. But the reality is that's not actually how work gets done. So I know from working on large scale programs, oftentimes when you really want to get something done, you don't necessarily follow the official channels. You might bypass the official channels. You might have relationships with people that you lean upon. So this is how the actual structure is how work is actually done. So these are the roles, the authorities, the processes that you need to follow that may or may not align with your chart. And here we have the ideal structure. So hypothetically, your organization should be structured in a way that brings the most efficiency. And this is the structure that's needed to operate most efficiently given the current situation. So the reality is structures diverge over time. Okay, so you may think that you have a formal structure that's representative of how work is organized and done. But the reality is the actual structure evolves and the ideal structure evolves. So this is constantly in teaching. It's always pulling apart. It's almost a law of organizations. Now, the life cycle here, and you see this a lot in telecommunications companies. I don't know how familiar this is to you, and hopefully not too familiar. But essentially, the life cycle here is organizations need to go through large-scale one-off restructures, basically to try and squeeze these things back together. So a reorganization is essentially an attempt to say, let's make our official org structure match how work is actually done and match what the ideal org structure is. Now, it's time-consuming, it's expensive, culturally it's horrible. Even if people aren't necessarily losing jobs, it can feel very, very awful to go through this process because you're essentially evaluated, assessed, and often the process of reapplying for your job. Here's the worst part, it's often wrong. You know, you might go through a process of analyzing and trying to figure out how should our structure really look, but oftentimes by the time you land, you discover the reality of how you need to work. So it's often already out of date at the time that it's applied. Startups are go through an interesting process because oftentimes, you start with a very small team who can be very effective in the way they communicate and operate. And then as you scale, as you add people, you're doing it based on demand. And oftentimes what can happen is you end up with a large organization where you suddenly have to go, wait a minute, is this structure and how it evolved? Is this actually serving us? So why I share this is because a lot of the organizations I'm working with now are recognizing in the same way that we want to apply Agile at the team level to think about how we work and de-risk how we work, we also need to apply it at the organization level. How do we govern and structure our organization? How do we continuously evolve and iterate as an organization? So here's the thing, no other organization has the same history, culture, and challenges as your organization. Okay, so this is by Jonathan Smart. He wrote a book called Sooner, Safer, Happier. Why do I share this? Because one of the first things that's important to note is your history, your culture, your unique challenges, your leadership are unique to you. So if I come in and tell you, here's how to do Agile, and I don't understand your business, I don't listen to you, it's a cookie cutter approach. It's not, and that's not the way to do it. It's often a recipe for friction and failure. Okay, so in our experience, here are the pathways to achieving agility. So if you can think of any organization who's gone agile, they've often followed one of these pathways. So the top pathway is what we call organic approach. This is where essentially the leadership feel comfortable that pockets of agile are going to spring up around the organization. There's usually good things that happen, and people love the good things that happen, but the challenge is it gets to a certain level, and there's often a lack of alignment, and there might be frustrations, legacy systems, and processes are encountered. So these organic pockets of good agile behavior can only go so far before they are squashed. The Big Bang approach, I'm not too sure if you have companies here that have followed this approach, but the Big Bang approach is where usually it's a McKinsey type model. It's where, is it okay to use the word McKinsey? Okay, it's usually when a big consulting company comes in and says, we've got the answers, and they enforce agile on the organization. Usually it's because those organizations that go through that process are usually in dire situations. Potentially, if they don't do something dramatically or drastically, we're going to go out of business. The reality is very, very high cultural disruption. It takes a heck of a lot of money because you're bringing in a whole team of consultants who are essentially going to do agile to you. And a lot of organizations that go through this type of change suffer culturally. The next way of doing agile is essentially taking more of an experimentation and trial and learn and iterative approach. This is good. Basically, it recognizes that we can't make an organization agile overnight. We have to take learnings. We have to run experiments. It's basically taking an agile approach to your agile transformation. We have to run experiments and learn from those experiments and apply them and scale the positive learnings and minimize the negative learnings. The challenge with an iterative approach, when it's not aligned to strategy, is sometimes you can lose sight of the desired business outcomes. Sometimes you can get stuck during the process of agile rather than really thinking and considering how does agile help us achieve our strategy. So we recommend the last approach here, and what I'm about to share next is essentially all our secrets in terms of how to take an iterative approach. This is where you are really clear on the intent of what you're trying to achieve. Why do you want to go agile? What are the business outcomes you want to achieve? And essentially where you take an agile approach to your journey. Okay, so step one, how to get started. Start with your why. Now, if your organization says we're going to go agile, one of the first questions you should ask is why. What business problems are you trying to solve? Now, if the answer is because it's cool and everyone else is doing it, and guess what? Sometimes that is the answer that executives get. It's probably not a very good why, not a very strong why. Now, sometimes there is a good clear why, but people aren't aligned around that why. You know, you might ask one person why we're doing agile, as if you want to answer. You ask another person to give a different answer. Okay, so here we will often work with the leadership team and the business. That's okay, that's fine. To be really clear and aligned, what is our why, and what are the specific business outcomes that you want to achieve? So in the same way that a project has business outcomes that you want to achieve and you want to align to, your agile transformation, your agile journey needs very clear business outcomes. And ideally they're aligned to your strategy. Ideally you know what direction you're heading in and how agile is going to serve you achieving that. Okay, so the next step, this we often see agile implementations go so far and then crash because they miss the step out, which is around aligning your leadership. Okay, so some of the most successful programs I've worked on have had what we call a bottom-up approach, is where you start with the teams, you educate them, and they work in an agile way, and a top-down approach. We just met with executive team from a major international company this morning, where they took this approach. They took very much a top-down approach, and you can see the benefits. You can see the mindset shifts in the leaders. So we will often start with some form of training, which is about creating the common language for the leadership team to know and understand what does it mean when you say we're going agile, why, and the business outcomes. It also really, really helps the teams doing the work when the leaders are aligned. Okay, I liken it to a family. When the parents don't fight, the kids are happy. So yeah, so we want the leaders to role model as a team. Now, our ideal situation is they have an agile coach. The leaders have an agile coach, just like the teams have an agile coach. We want the leaders to have an agile coach because they're about to go on a change journey themselves. And yeah, so we recommend that this work is supported by someone who's been there, done that. Someone who's got the background and experience to know and understand the pain points for senior leaders and how to navigate those when you think about going agile. Okay, so the next step, once you've got that alignment, once you're clear on your why and your business outcomes, is essentially set up a ways of working, what we call a center of enablement, center of excellence, ways of working transformation teams, lots of different terms, but it's essentially somewhere in the business that owns the capability. Okay, so they own the roadmap for change, they own the internal capability, which includes the coaches, the practices, the playbooks, and they also play a role in governing, supporting transparency and removal of blockages of things that are preventing progress. Okay, the center of enablement is also where you run your training from, you provide coaches to the business from, etc. All right, then once you've got that established, you've got a clear owner, you want to build a roadmap for change. Okay, so this is about identifying we're here today and we want to be there in 3 years' time. What's our plan to get there? So the clearer you are on the plan, by the way, it will change. The clearer you are on the plan, the more you'll be able to build and gather momentum to get there. So the roadmap, when we design these, and I'm about to share a roadmap with you, there's often different streams, and you brought up 5 key streams: culture, people, technology, organizational structure, not work and leadership, which we've spoken about. Here's an example of some kind of buckets of initiatives and change. So governance, how do we govern the Agile journey? How do we lead the Agile journey? Training and coaching, how are we going to make sure everyone knows and understands what we talk about when we operate in an Agile way? And how are we going to build the internal capability? So rather than being dependent on consultants or contractors, who are the people we can partner with who are going to help us have the capability internally to operate? Okay, so we start small and we scale learning. So rather than trying to take a big bang approach, we often use this concept of piloting. This is where you identify 1 or 2 projects, you support them with coaching, you have governance around them, and you ask them to replay back what's going well and what's not going well, and you look to scale that. Oftentimes you start with a team, then you scale to a department, and if it's really bringing benefits, you might scale to the rest of the organization. So pilot with teams and departments, establish a community of practice. This is a place where people can go to get insights, inspiration, and share war stories. And look for the business to pull on your capability and desire rather than push it on them. Okay, so step 7. By the way, I'm speeding through this because I want us to get to Q&A so we can really hear some of the challenges and questions and comments that you want to share and contribute as well. So step 7 is part of your overall change stream. You want to have a really clear comm strategy. This is to make sure that everyone doesn't feel left out. Sometimes when you run a pilot, a team might feel like they're getting all the benefits, and other teams might feel like there's a real us and them dynamic going on. We don't want that. We want everyone to feel on the same page about what's happening in the world. So the reason why I say communicate is because you think you've communicated enough, but you haven't. Keep communicating. Keep sharing the story, the vision, and how you produce them. All right, so if you've got this far, congratulations. What I say to you is keep running experiments. Keep running experiments, keep iterating. So don't feel like you've arrived when you see everyone operating in stand-ups. Always look to unlock more value, unlock more agility in the way that you think and operate. Going back to my example of the organization that goes through that restructuring process, what we're actually looking for is through this process of running experiments and iterating, we start to unlock how can we dynamically shift as an organization to be responsive to the market. So we're always in dialogue. We're always through a process of evolving and changing. All right, these are our secrets. Sorry, Hugo, but there it is. We'll all become agile experts now. But that's all I have for you. One more slide. I want to share this. This is an example roadmap. Now, don't go overwhelmed. This is very targeted and specific to an organization. So this was developed based on what they wanted. So what they wanted is they wanted support to essentially build their own internal coaching capability. So I'm not going to go through this in too much detail, but I want you to sort of see here, this is an example of the sort of roadmap that can be created for your organization going through the process we just shared in the previous slide. So again, it's if you're taking a photo and in a year's time we meet up with you and we see that you're operating in an amazing way, just make sure you say thanks to this meetup with Ekipa. All right. Okay, so this is my LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me if you want to ask me other questions or have a dialogue about what we've shared here. But yeah, I hope that was useful. So I think now we're going to enter into a bit of Q&A. I believe Hugo might ask us some questions. We might have some questions from the audience.
Yeah, because I think maybe we'll do the Q&A in Bahasa, but I have one question that I want to ask you both speakers. So I was in San Francisco at a Lean Startup conference. I think it was like 10 years ago, and then Eric Ries was one of the speakers, and what he said was, you left your corporate job because the room was full of startups. So the guy said, you left your corporate job to start a startup, right? And you left the corporate job because you want to create something better. That's why you start a startup. That's why the founders of Eden Farm started a new organization, because they've seen what corporations look like. They realize, if I work there, I'm a number working in a silo and I'm replaceable. And he also said, if you did that, if your motivation to start a startup was to create something better, why is it that you're trying to create the same type of big organization that you left? Because that's what you eventually end up with. So Eden Farm is 750 people. Now, when did you start?
2015.
15. So that means, okay, 7 years to 750. If you continue at that pace, and in a couple of years, you're going to be Gojek size.
Oh, sorry, 2017.
17. So it's even faster than, yes. So you grow very fast and you become a big organization. Now, you both spoke about structure, the organizational structure, and also about leadership. So I think my question to you, I don't know if you can answer it, but maybe some of your team can also help. What are you doing in Eden Farm to create an organizational structure that avoids becoming this big rigid dinosaur that you, I think, don't want to become? And what are the specific leadership behavior or the leadership behaviors that you are encouraging to remain, to become or to remain agile, and to avoid becoming an organization with papa and buddies? We will stop down trying to command and control everything. So yeah, I hope I didn't insult anyone.
Yeah, that's
You used the Bula wearing batik, so that's great.
yeah. You better sit there, you know. Okay, for your question, maybe in my slide is the last slide. So yeah, we still on that journey about the organization and leadership. So maybe I cannot share you a lot about that because we doing agile or being agile or whatever it's called maybe less than 1 year, and it's way a long journey to go to there with the organization. So that's why myself and the last slide because we won't go there. So about the huge of organization, maybe like you said, there's gonna be a corporation or papa, yeah, like you said. We hopefully not gonna happen with us, and we try to make it better with the big organization, and we keep our agility and our mind and our whole level organization.
So if you look at the leadership team, you're part of that, I believe.
Yeah,
I don't know, you have C-level,
yeah.
you're part of C-level, you're the one
No,
below,
I'm saying below.
one minus one.
My boss in there.
Boss,
If you want.
the-
Papa.
Yeah,
Yeah, my boss.
so what are some of the behaviors that you are stimulating in order to remain agile? Like what are some specific behaviors that you encourage within the leadership team as a role model for the rest of the organization?
Yeah, it should be. Should be.
But
Uh,
can you got my question?
okay.
Hi, thanks for information. I'm VP of product of Eden Farm. For those of you who don't know me, so as Ridwan mentioned, and also Matt, it's indeed a journey. Currently, it's been a lot in tech because it's easier to do in software development. We are pushing it as well, so it's not we from tech as an organization. We are trying to be more goal-oriented. I would say one of the first steps is to align the goal across all the divisions. So at least there is a common speech across everybody. So we are very much OKR oriented. We are not there yet, partially so far. I believe that will be our next step until we reach full agility. Okay, and if you look at the organizational structure, are you building a pyramid or are you trying circles or something else? Steel pyramid. Why is that? It's easier. It's easier in the mindset of people. Structurally, they know where they stand. There is always this compromise, right? The more agile you are, the more you look at the draft, and the sense of belonging may become an issue. So while with the structure, okay, this is my boss, this is my N+2, this is my N+3. If I want to grow in the company, I have to go to N+1, N+2, N+3 until CEO. Yeah, this is one of the challenges, I think. And I think the issue is when you start there, and yes, you need it because people expect that type of clarity and the ladder to climb. I think over time, you grow more rigid, right? And then it becomes like this dinosaur. So I'm always thinking that for small organizations that are growing, it would be beneficial to think about how can we change that? How can we still create that clarity and opportunity for people to grow? Maybe not vertically, but not like up, but horizontally. So I can widen my skills instead of the path to the CEO level. Well, yeah, so you create this clarity, but you don't create a rigid structure. Yeah, there are no easy answers, but you like there's the tribes and squads structure, like the organization we were just mentioning is a big pharma. They are very big, 110,000 people worldwide, and in most of the country organizations, it's a circle. So they try to reshape the pyramid to a circle. It's a bit McKinsey style, but they deviated a bit from that, and I think it helps.
Yeah, I'd probably just add to that having experience in seeing very circular flat structures, one of the challenges with that is sometimes a lack of hierarchy creates confusion in terms of accountabilities. And then sometimes not everyone's equipped to necessarily show up to work and have that mindset of wanting to explore and find, what is my accountability and how to add value. Sometimes it's perfectly comfortable and natural to essentially know exactly what your what is expected of you. So I personally am agnostic, to pyramid structure. What I work on is with leaders, how do we use their strengths, their sense of ability to come up with solutions, and shift that into more of a servant leadership by providing the vision, the clarity, and the support for the teams to do work. And I've seen some very strong command and control leaders. Once they realize they don't have to be a completely different type of leader, they just need to reshape and reuse the way they give energy to the organization, become some of the most powerful, inspiring agile leaders.
That was my question, but I don't want to hijack Q&A. So I think we can do Bahasa Q&A. Oke, aku dulu ya. Okay, it's more like a comment actually, rather than a question itself. I don't think you'll get fired. First off, it's very good, but it is the plan, right? And it's really up to the execution. Like it's good and it makes a lot of sense, but it will take some time. The execution is painful, definitely painful. This is the difficult. It's easy to overlook the difficulty of it.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of my dry New Zealand humor. The reality is that's why we do what we do, because we provide the support and the experience to help implement and deliver the plan. You're absolutely right. Like that one pager, it is important to kind of know the high level and understand it, but when you get into the detail, there are a whole bunch of organizational challenges, and what I call almost like organizational echoes, things that you think the common sense way should be the way, but the reality is that people have a history of why they present challenges. So you're absolutely right.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm from Hong. So actually, I have this question with you. How we can give a management level foundation of Agile, as we know, like not all the people that know Agile and how to implement it, right? So like, how can have their support to do it in our company and like, to achieve the goal and maybe the company vision together. That's my first question. And the second one is actually, is there any way that how can we share the goal to our developer team so they know how to do it? Sorry. So they just not to do it by task. They know the goals and they know what to achieve. And yes, Mas Ridwan mentioned it's about the business outcome, right? So how can we share and emphasize it, encouraging to them that we are doing it for the company, not just for the job only. That's the question. Thank you.
Okay, so the first, let me just clarify. So the first question is how, actually, do you mind just repeating the first one again? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially for like our management level, like the leaders.
Sure, I understand. Okay, so I think the first thing is, if you remember back to my slide in terms of being clear on the why and the business outcome. So let's focus on the why. I think it's really important that there's alignment around the why. And just if there isn't alignment, I would probably want to try and get alignment. I want to have some sort of workshop where your agile leadership are working alongside the leaders to really solidify the why and the business outcomes you're trying to achieve by agile. And without knowing the details, I imagine you want to be more responsive to your customers. I mean, that's probably a very clear or why. I probably should ask you, right? But you know, so I think that then informs, okay, well, what do we as a team do in order to achieve that outcome? Sometimes two teams look like they're doing the exact same things, but one that's clear on the why, so it just has an energy, has a vision, has a sense of purpose, that goes beyond just, I think to answer your second question, goes beyond just I'm just doing tasks. I'm doing tasks because that's what my job is. Now, onto your second question, I think one of the things that I love doing with Agile teams is, particularly development teams, is bringing in some of those executive key, whatever the right term is, stakeholders to come and sit with the team, to share their vision. And I've found that most of the time being a constraint, but most of the time they love the opportunity to do that. And what it does for the team, right? I remember working on a project in Qatar with a team who delivered and developed a product over an 8-month period. Then it went live, and we were implementing it in a home. It was basically fiber. And the team who'd been working on this project for 8 months, and they plugged it in, and the lights went on, and everything. The team, one or two individuals goes, "Oh, that's what we've been working on. This is after 8 months, right?" And so that particular team was really disconnected from their kind of a high vision for what it was they're working on. They're obviously just being compartmentalized to focus on do this, do this, do this, do this. How much more powerful and beneficial would it be if they were really clear and saw the bigger picture? So I think to answer your second question, as much as you can, you want to connect everyone with that bigger picture. You want to give them the opportunity to ask questions, to even maybe appear a little bit out of the loop, or a little bit silly by asking questions. Whatever it takes for them to really know and understand and own that vision for themselves. Did I answer your original?
Yeah, kind of for the second question. So I assume that we have to have what we call the collaboration with stakeholder rights to see what their really needs, so that we understand what we are built for. And okay.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that is the role of the product owner, to represent that vision, that stakeholder. But I still love to bring in those senior people to have conversations with the team.
Yeah, maybe we still need that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think there's one question in the back, right? Okay. Nama siapa? Nanti sebentar.
Oke, halo. Saya namanya Fadil dari People di Ekipa. Okay, what I'm gonna ask is, in terms of Agile, specifically culture, like Masjid one said before, how do you balance it, like the one Matt said in the first beginning of the Smith? The culture itself is already built in organization, and by this concept of Agile, I mean, what I'm gonna take is, you already have the culture of Agile, and how do you align this Agile concept of culture and then the culture itself in organization? I think that is my question. Thank you.
Great question, and it's a question that I think there were many authors or experts that wrote books about this. Culture is quite hard to define. You started out saying that the culture is already defined, it's already there. And basically what I understand is you're asking, how do I add Agile to that, right? So I think that's one question. The other way to look at it is, what Agile values or behaviors do you already have within your culture, and how can you reinforce that in order to create an organization that remains Agile? So for me personally, I'm more of an entrepreneur. I don't like the big dinosaurs that I mentioned earlier. the past 5-6 years, we've been helping those big dinosaurs to become more flexible, and it's a very big headache because those organizations are so big and rigid, including the people that are in there, that it's hard to change. And it's an interesting challenge, but it takes time. So I think when you build a new organization, you have much more chance to shape it in the right way. And I think culture is everything. Culture is the thing that drives what happens with the organization. So I think that the topics are culture, leadership, and structure. So how do you, again, that was my question before, how do you shape leadership such that they recognize what do we need to role model within our own behavior and the rest of the organization to reach our business outcomes? Because I think the question is not so much how do we create an agile culture, how do we create an agile organization? It's about how do we reach our business outcomes, whatever they be, right? Getting more investment, getting more clients, servicing more people with organic farming. And how can the agile way of working, the agile way of thinking, help us to get there? And I think that's where your question is relevant. How do we link that to the leadership behavior that we already have? And how do we role model that so that we reach our destination faster? I think that's and it's a complex puzzle, but I think that, so it's not so much like, oh, we have a culture and then this comes in and it adds. No, it's about what can we pick, what can we do more of in our behaviors, in our structure, in the way we service our clients so that we reach our destination faster. Special treatment to well, again, it comes back to what behavior do you simulate, right? So if you look at an individual, be it a leader, be it somebody else, you have two things that drive what the person does. It's behavior, which comes back to core values of the person and to what extent they match with what you have set out as core values for the company. So what do they show the right behavior, yes or no? And do they perform, yes or no? Now the agile stuff, again, is linked to the behavior side. That's the soft side of your culture links to do people behave, and you can plot people on a matrix, right? So you have basically vertically you have behavior, so core values, and then on the horizontal axis you've got performance, and you can plot people on that. So you don't only look at performance of KPIs, but you also look at behavior, and that can again be linked to what kind of agile organization do you want to create, and what behaviors linked to that. You wanted to add something, Matt?
Probably just very quickly. So an organization is made up of departments, which is made up of teams, which is made up of individuals. So effectively, sometimes we lose sight of that. And so when we think about the culture of an organization, it's really like, if this is, let's just say everyone in this room is Ekipa. You are the culture of the organization. So and you play a part in shaping that and making it what it is. There's also a history. Sometimes organizations are like entities. There's like a memory that can exist. So no matter what no matter what you think you say now, sometimes you're dealing with almost a bigger memory or bigger, I don't want to use the word spirit, but I can't think of a better word right now, that exists. So let's say that is culture. So I think to answer your question, some of the most effective ways to shape that is to work with individuals. Work with individuals. This is why this man, the work he does is so important, because not only is he about introducing Agile, he's also about working with individuals to help unlock. So culture change starts right there. Yeah.
Perlu dijawab lagi nggak? That's enough now. You want me to share the story when I first time joined the event? short story aja ya. Oke, mungkin pertama kali memang pada waktu join itu kan memang dibutuhkan adalah Scrum Master. Nah, waktu masuk memang mungkin dari tim tersebut ngikutin apa yang diminta dari PO-nya aja. Jadi masih based on task oriented lah, yang penting dikerjain. Nah, dari situ saya coba untuk switching atau shifting lah dari mereka fokusnya di backlog, tapi kenapa mereka cuma fokus di backlog terus, tapi goals-nya itu sendiri yang dicapai dari seperti itu malah nggak pernah dapat. Nah, dari situ yang bisa saya ambil pelajaran adalah bahwa pekerjaan tim itu adalah sebenarnya lebih ke ownership-nya mereka. Ketika mereka bisa mencapai goals atau sprint goal yang diinginkan dari seorang product owner-nya, itu berarti mereka adalah kerja tim. Kalau mereka hanya menyelesaikan backlog, ternyata kita cross function itu ada backend, front end, QA, SR dan sebagainya. Sebelumnya memang kerjanya itu adalah BE dikerjain dulu semua backlog BE-nya dikerjain semua. Habis itu BE mana? Ke front end semua. Akhirnya yang kelimpungan siapa? QA-nya. BE, FE, SE semua udah selesai, QA-nya aduh gimana dong gitu. Dan jadi kita coba untuk approach ke setiap individu dari tim, apa yang sudah dilakukan. Fokus adalah di goals sama per backlog, prioritas. Di mana kita harus membandingkan ada prioritasnya. Misalkan kita ambil 5 backlog, ya udah backlog 1 kita selesai dulu. Taruhlah mungkin goals kita itu yang bisa kita achieve pada misalkan 4 backlog. Yang 5 itu technical debt atau feature yang buat nambahin apa sesuatu yang ada nggak kelihatan dengan sebut. Tapi pola kerjanya, way of working adalah backlog pertama kita selesaikan sampai backlog 4. Berarti dengan 4 backlog goals kita udah tercapai. Berarti tujuan dalam satu sprint itu tujuannya dulu. Nah, ketika sisa 2 backlog itu nggak kita selesaikan atau kita selesaikan, itu adalah achievement tambahan. Tapi fokus kita adalah goals-nya. Karena kalau kita fokus di backlog aja, sama aja kita akan balik lagi ke output lagi. Kalau goals apapun itu dari tim itu akan mencoba untuk achieve goals-nya. Nah, itu pertama kali join masing-masing lihat seperti kita. Ini saya coba untuk sedikit dari semua tim itu akan mindsetnya itu udah ke outcome oriented. Itu masalah.
Halo Mas Ridwan, tanya ya.
Oh iya, silakan.
Mas saya Lia. Tadi menarik banget Mas soal metrik agility
Iya.
matrix tadi ya. Business agility matrix ya.
Iya, betul.
Mungkin aku perlu dijelasin sedikit soal bagian quality-nya, kan ada tulisannya MTPR tadi ya.
Oke.
Itu terus abis itu juga mungkin menurut pengalamannya Mas Ridwan sendiri, business agility matrix itu pengaruhnya apa ke key matrix-nya perusahaan sama start matrix-nya perusahaan?
Oke, perlu mungkin kalau nggak gini, yang berarti yang quality itu kalau yang tadi saya adalah build the things right ya.
Iya.
Build the things right. MTTR itu adalah make to recover. Jadi ketika kita menemukan bug atau defect di production, itu seberapa cepat kita bisa recovernya? Karena potensi bug atau technical debt whatsoever lah, bug itu ketika di production itu akan potensi memberikan loss yang kadang kita nggak tahu lossnya itu mungkin dalam sebulan kita bisa losskan misalkan dalam financial bisa 1 juta atau berapa pun. Kita lihat dari situ. Atau bisa jadi dengan bug tersebut itu merugikan. Misalkan payment kita nggak masuk tapi ternyata sales auditnya itu approve. Nah itu kan seberapa cepat kita bisa menutup atau mereduce dari defect-defect tersebut. Nah yang satu lagi adalah escape defect itu adalah sudah banyak dari satu waktu tertentu bug yang ditemukan di production. Kita ngomongin production, kita nggak akan ngomongin di development.
Jadi ngukurnya pakai waktu gitu ya Mas?
Iya, satuan waktu. Di satuan tertentu ya, misalkan satu bulan ini berapa sih bug kita, seberapa cepat sih kita menyelesaikan bug tersebut?
Ya.
Mesti harus idealnya semakin ke sana itu semakin sedikit. Kalau semakin besar berarti ada sesuatu yang mesti kita inspect lagi. Apa sih sebenarnya yang kurang atau yang perlu kita inspect lagi.
Terus Mas sudah pernah ukur, jadi misalnya quality atau salah satu dari matrix ini berjalan dengan baik gitu, terus efeknya apa ke matrix yang bisnis?
Company-nya. biasanya dari value sama flow-nya. Ketika kita ingin deliver sesuatu, misalkan saya nyontohin aja ya, nyontohin kayak hari misalkan ada hari tani nih tanggal 24 kan dia kalau nggak salah ya. Itu ada hari tani, kita ada promo, kita ada deliver suatu feature gitu. Nah dari sini feature tersebut kalau kita benar bisa hari sebelum hari tani, kita dapat potensi opportunity sekian lah, kita bisa dihitung dengan financial maupun dengan sosial. Nah jika kita tidak build dengan agile speed, berarti kita akan lost dari opportunity tersebut. Nah dari sisi yang lain apa? Ketika kita nggak balance, pasti akan ada efek yang akan diakibatkan dari ketika sesuai dengan yang kita ukur tersebut.
Itu diukur nggak sih Mas? Diukur atau enggak?
Diukur.
Ya diukur ya.
Jadi seperti NPS ini berapa? Misalkan kita ada rilis produk baru nih, biasanya kita akan perbarui itu NPS-nya, untuk kasih produk kita. Selain NPS juga kita sebenarnya punya ketika customer order, kita pasti minta feedbacknya. Nah dari feedback tersebut kita kumpulkan, mungkin seminggu 2 minggu lagi kita cari yang rating itu jelek, ini kenapa ini? Itu yang kita akan coba kembangkan terus, misalkan inovasi apa sih, kenapa mereka nggak puas, atau waktu telat dan sebagainya. Nah itu berbagai macam, itu memang ada tim sendiri. Mungkin saya yang tadi saya jelaskan hanya yang secara general aja yang akan bisa.
So I'm asking basically what's the impact on business agility metrics to business metrics, right? And do you actually measure it properly? And he already answered. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any questions? I think we already almost have on the sidewalk. Okay, here's one more. Maybe this is probably like the last question because we already in the.
Hey, hi, my name is Sandy. I'm from the Choco Crypto. My question is maybe for our ladies. What the ingredients to make people to have more ownership? Because what I face is people is hard to do self management because I feel the hardest on the teacher is the self management. They don't they are waiting for people to assign their job. What's the tips or trick to make people to have more ownership so they can more self-management on doing this agile? Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. So the question is
Uh,
all the tips and tricks to make people self.
Seperti yang langsung bahasa, oke, apa ya? Oke. Sebenarnya itu bukan tips dan trik sih, tapi sebenarnya itu adalah sebuah proses. Dari awal semua pasti people atau manusia itu pasti akan awalnya ngikutin apa yang menjadi culture mereka sebelumnya. Ketika mereka udah join di Scrum team, terutama yang tadi self manage ya, self manage sebenarnya dari prosesnya. Yang bisa kita lakukan atau yang biasa saya lakukan adalah mereka harus tahu goals-nya. Jadi mereka tahu goals-nya dan mereka akan berusaha untuk mencapai itu. Goals itu kita kasih time box ya, sekitar 2 mingguan sprint. Bagaimana dalam sprint itu bisa self-manage, tidak menunggu task. Kalau mereka tahu goals-nya, mereka akan cari caranya untuk mencapai goals tersebut. Tapi kalau kita kasih backlog, ya mereka fokusnya di backlog, tapi goals kita tentukan, product owner akan menyediakan backlognya, tim akan fokus pada goals-nya. Untuk goals itu dari mana? Dari mengerjakan backlog tersebut. Nah, ini juga diperkuat pada waktu di daily. Nah, the power of daily scrum sebenarnya, yang mana itu saat ini seringnya itu di daily itu digunakan untuk update status. Seringnya seperti itu. Nah, daily itu sebenarnya bukan itu fungsinya. Daily itu mereka ketemu tiap hari untuk mengukur atau melihat kita masih bisa capai goals nggak sih. Sprint tanpa goal itu yang ada kita benar-benar nggak cuman dikasih kayak waterfall tapi 2 mingguan aja. Tapi kalau kita punya goals, tim itu akan fokus untuk mencapai goal tersebut. Dan goals itu yang menentukan adalah Scrum team, bukan PO-nya, bukan Scrum Master-nya, bukan developer, tapi semua. Tapi objektifnya adalah dari product owner. Intinya itu, jangan sampai pada sprint itu nggak punya goals, apalagi ketika planning yang dibahas backlognya dulu. Yang dibahas itu adalah goalsnya. Kita 2 minggu ini mau mencapai apa, tujuan kita apa. Nah dari situ baru menentukan backlognya. Kalau itu mereka kan fokus di goals, karena pertama kali yang mereka dapat itu adalah goalsnya, bukan backlog.
Doing backlog one first, ya kan? Tapi apa yang dilakukan oleh tim jika contohnya dia sebagai front end, sedangkan yang front end yang udah selesai, yang belum selesai itu adalah yang bagian end. Itu kan dia kosong. Nah, namun dia juga akan kesulitan untuk membantu tim atau membantu tim untuk menyelesaikan di backlog satu. Nah, biasanya apa yang harus dilakukan oleh front end tersebut? Karena saya rasa ini cukup common ya.
Iya, oke, ini teknik banget ya. Nggak apa-apa. Commonly memang karena jika mengerjakannya itu seperti tadi bilang, backlog dikecilin semua dulu pasti ada salah satu yang dia bengong. Jadi kalau makanya ada self managed kan mereka tim, misalkan ada 4 orang. Mereka tuh 4 orang tuh fokus di backlog satu dulu. Jadi mereka kan berkolaborasi, engage bareng-bareng, ngumpul bareng untuk benar-benar nyelesain backlog satu dulu. Backlog satu selesai, udah testing dan sebagainya, baru move lagi ke backlog 2. Jadi mereka kerja bareng terus. Tapi kalau oke, backlognya 5 udah kerjaan, back end-nya 1, lompat ke 3, lompat ke 2, lompat ke 4. Back end udah selesai semua, front end-nya baru kecap. Kianya belum bisa ngapa-ngapain, paling bikin skenario dan sebagainya. Ini practically ya, jadi nggak selalu benar practically itu seperti apa, yang tahu adalah tim sendiri. Tapi kami kalau seperti itu, yang paling suffer itu adalah di terakhir. Makanya, yang goalsnya apa? Setiap sprint itu adalah fokus di backlog prioritasnya. Makanya backlog itu ada priority, itu tujuannya. Jadi tim itu benar-benar bisa work together untuk mencapai goals yang sudah ditetapkan di awal.
Berarti is okay aja kalau ada salah satu itu nggak ngerjain apa-apa.
It's not okay sebenarnya. Berarti mereka nggak kerja bareng gitu. Satu apa.
Oke, I get it.
Oke.
So are you satisfied with the answer, I think?
Okay, maybe you can share some of the tips and tricks that you apply on something like that.
That's why you took the monkey. So I think my answer, your answer to the question is on the tactical Scrum level. I think that I concur that's where you do the play, like you tactically solve the problem that you asked. I think it's also related to what we discussed earlier about behaviors and culture. So when it comes to self-organization, the core of it is ownership. Right? You want to make people feel that, oh, I own a sticky note or a task on a project board, or I own a problem that we have in the business. And that comes down to what behaviors do we expect? Because people within the everybody in the organization wants to know what's expected of me. The clearer you answer that and reinforce and repeat that, where what Matt said, communicate, the clearer the answer will be for people, and people start understanding, okay, this is what's expected of me as a person. So in Ekipa, for example, one of the core values that we defined is be your own boss. So that's one of the four core values that we keep having conversations about. We have every month we have a session around our Ekipa Reinvented, our sort of operating system, and sometimes it's about be your own boss. Sometimes it's about entrepreneurship, and by reinforcing conversation around that core value or that behavior, people start understanding better what does this mean. So it's not be your own boss. It's written on a paper or on a wall somewhere, but we have conversations so people understand. And in a team, you can also use a behavior like that to give feedback to people in the team. So if you notice somebody is not taking responsibility for a task that has to be executed in the Scrum team, you can you can give feedback to the person using that core value, because you say, okay, this is agreed within the organization. This is what we expect from each other. And I noticed that in this particular situation, you were a bit passive and you didn't take the responsibility. So this is not aligned with being your own boss. So it's about making sure everybody understands what's expected and keep reinforcing that message time and again. And to make it even stronger, you can link this to performance reviews. So you could also look at what I just said, with you have a matrix, you've got behaviors, you've got performance. Now, if I have a yearly appraisal with people, I can make part of the appraisal dependent on the behavior that the person shows in alignment with the core values or the behaviors we expect. So we could do a 360 rating, for example, on the behaviors that we expect. And 50% of the appraisal is dependent on the person's alignment with those behaviors. And this makes it even stronger, because then people have even a financial incentive to behave as you want them to behave. And it makes it also easier to get people out if they don't, which is also pretty important. So if you get a guy and you keep giving him feedback, take the monkey, take the ownership of the problem with a sticky note, and he consistently does not, and you coach him to get there and he doesn't, he has to leave.
Okay.
You want to give the monkey to someone?
Oh, yeah, maybe later I can explain. Right? Do you any additional for this?
Maybe I'll just, I don't want to overtalk it, but probably just back to the original point about tips and tricks. I find that people take ownership. There could be a number of reasons. One is could be a spectrum of not having capability or not having what they need. And to your point, what they need might be very clear direction. Do this, this, and this. That might be just be where they're at. And so if that individual is like that, I'll focus on giving them, uplifting their capability, giving them what they needed to know how to generate their own insights to be able to do that. The other spectrum could be they don't genuinely have ownership. And we see that a lot, where we go, you're empowered, you have ownership, go at it. And as soon as they do something, someone goes, that is not what I wanted. So in that example, it could be learned behavior. Like, I'm not going to put myself out there in case I'm going to get in trouble. Now, sometimes leaders can shift and change. And remember, I talked about organizational memory. I've seen an organization that had a CEO who was a bully. He left and a new CEO came in who wasn't a bully, but the organization is not going to change the way that they responded to that CEO. Because the memory was there. And so that CEO had to work doubly hard to essentially unravel that. And I think it's enough for now. Yeah. Hopefully there's something there that helps.
Okay, thank you. So the team from the online, is there any questions, or we can close the presentation? Okay, so I think that's all for the questions. Or maybe before we close, maybe there is some message from the three musketeers. One of you can share maybe your powerful message for all the audience, probably like as a take point.
My is that okay, probably just that this journey, wherever you are on the journey, it's actually about you connecting with being a human being. So the reason why I love working with Agile and implementing Agile organizations is actually I get to help people reconnect with who they are as a leader, as an individual. So my message to you is, no matter where you are on the journey, take time to think about what is your purpose, what are the things that you love and value when you come to work, and try and connect more to that, whatever that is.
I will combine ya. Basically I'm gonna use bahasa. Jadi menurut saya itu perubahan itu yang mungkin biasa saja. Perubahan itu tidak akan terjadi dalam semalam. Itu pasti akan gradual bertahap. Walaupun dalam prosesnya itu, dalam tahapan-tahapan itu memang gak menyenangkan. Namanya perubahan semua gak menyenangkan. Tapi semua itu berubah harus dimulai dari kita sendiri. kita bisa berubah, kita mau berubah, pola pikir kita berubah, dan action akan mengikuti. Seperti itu.
I think my message is that let's make it very philosophical, right? The future of our planet and humanity depends on entrepreneurship. And I think that what Agile is actually about is to unleash this entrepreneurial spirit within organizations, be it big ones that want to become more like startups, be it startups that want to grow bigger, but remain entrepreneurial. And I think companies like Eden Farm that try to solve bottlenecks in the supply chain for farmers is a good example of that. And I think this whole story of Agile is, in a way, it's a hype, but it's also useful because this ingredient of entrepreneurship is spread globally because everybody buys into this hype. And it takes time to understand what Agile is truly about, but in any way, the start is Scrum, but that's not what it's about. It's about a journey, a process to unleash this entrepreneurship, and it takes time. And it's also not start, stop. There is no beginning and end. It's more of a ongoing process that you have to embark on. Yeah. Entrepreneurship, that's my closing word.
Thank you, Hugo. Thank you, Mas Ridwan. Thank you so much for the insight as always. So hopefully we can have more spirits into the Agile, and then we can, after this discussion, we can bring more impact to our organization. Okay, thank you. So we're coming to the closing. Okay. So from Ekipa, we want to share the free ebook that you can download on this QR code. So there is one ebook. The author is here, Hugo Messer. Is Start Agile. So maybe for each of you still don't know where to start, how to start Agile, maybe you can read this book and you can start from yourself to become Agile before you can contribute to the organization. Next. Okay, everybody already get the QR code? Yes, okay, so the next one is there is a free ebook for scaling up. The author is Peter Van Os. This is our managing partner to help the startups to do the scale up into the bigger size of the company. So I think Agile Farm is also the journey, right? Once we want to scale up the business and also the people. So I think maybe this can help you guys also to creating more impact to the organization. And the next one, we want also hear your feedback to this event. And I want to share also the monkey. I got the monkey here. So why monkey? I think the monkey has don't tell me what to do. This is like Ekipa gimmick. So this is coming from a book of managing time management, right? From the William Onken. Who's Got the Monkey? So maybe every one of you can read the book about what is the monkey philosophy, and we will give you the monkey. So this is actually the challenge that you have to solve later on. So so after you follow our social media and giving the feedback, and you can show to our team in the front desk, and then you can get the merchandise there. Thank you so much for attending this event, and see you for the next our event. Thank you so much.